Nobody in that room was ready for what Adam Schiff was holding. Not the other senators. Not the legal teams seated along the wall. Not the cameras that had been running for 2 hours on what had been, up until that moment, a predictable confirmation hearing. And not Kash Patel, because what Schiff placed on the table in front of him wasn't a talking point. It wasn't a news article. It wasn't an opposition research document assembled by a political team trying to score points before the cameras. It was a classified file, and the moment it appeared on the table, everything in that room changed. The hearing had been running on schedule all morning. Kash Patel had arrived composed, prepared. He had been through confirmation hearings before, had watched them, had advised people going through them, had spent weeks preparing for precisely this kind of moment with some of the most experienced political and legal minds in Washington. He knew how these things worked. He understood the format. He had spent weeks in preparation sessions with experienced attorneys and political advisors, running through every scenario they could construct. He had his answers ready for the hard questions, his deflections prepared for the harder ones, and his composure locked in for the hardest moments of all. He had walked into that chamber confident, and for most of the morning, that confidence had been warranted. What he had not prepared for was a senator who had spent years on the Senate Intelligence Committee, years reviewing the most sensitive documents in the United States government, walking into a confirmation hearing with one of those documents in his hand. That is not a normal thing. It is, in fact, an extraordinarily rare thing, because classified documents don't typically appear in open congressional hearings. There are rules. There are procedures. There are entire institutional frameworks built around controlling where classified information goes and when, and in front of whom. When a senator with the appropriate clearances and the appropriate authority decides to bring a classified document into an open hearing and read from it on the record, it means something very specific. It means that senator has looked at that document, has weighed what it contains against the institutional costs of exposing it in a public setting, has consulted with legal counsel about the boundaries of what can be said and where, and has arrived at the conclusion that what is in that document is important enough, and the public's right to understand it urgent enough. To take that step despite all of those costs, that is not a casual decision. It is one of the most deliberate moves available to a senator with Intelligence Committee experience. And Adam Schiff had made it. Adam Schiff had made that decision. And Kash Patel was about to find out why. Schiff's time began the way his colleagues' time had begun throughout the morning, procedural, measured. He asked Patel several questions about his background, his qualifications, his understanding of the role he was being considered for. Patel answered all of them smoothly. He had the rhythm of the hearing down by now, the tone and pace of someone who has survived the morning and started to believe the afternoon is going to go the same way. Then Schiff picked up the file. He held it for a moment without opening it. He did not announce what it was. He did not explain what he was about to do. He simply held it, a physical object in a room full of people who could see it and were already trying to understand what it meant that it was there. He looked at Patel. Directly, I want to ask you about something specific, he said. His voice was level, precise. The voice of someone who had decided exactly what they were going to do and was now simply doing it. The room shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, the way a room shifts when the people in it collectively realize that something is happening that they did not anticipate, and that the next few minutes are going to be different from everything that came before them. Schiff opened the file. He read the classification markings at the top of the document, the designations that establish what it was, where it came from, and what level of clearance was required to access it. Then he began to read the content. What he read described a specific set of communications, specific dates, specific individuals named in the document, specific decisions that had been made at a specific point in time involving the national security apparatus of the United States government. The details themselves cannot be fully reproduced here. That is the nature of classified material. But what can be said, what Schiff established by reading those passages into the open record of a Senate confirmation hearing, is that the account of events those documents contained was not consistent with the account Kash Patel had been presenting to the public, to the media, and in prior testimony. The inconsistency was not subtle. It was not a matter of framing or emphasis, or the selective use of accurate information to construct a misleading picture. It was a direct factual conflict between what an official classified government document said had happened and what the nominee sitting at the witness table had been saying for months. Patel's expression did not collapse. He is too experienced for that, but something changed in it. The settled, forward-leaning confidence of the morning gave way to something more careful, more contained, the kind of expression that forms on a person's face when they are working very hard, in real time, to assess a situation they did not anticipate and decide how to respond to it without making it worse. 7 seconds passed before he said anything. 7 seconds is not a long time in ordinary conversation. In a Senate confirmation hearing, with cameras running and every person in the chamber watching, it is an eternity. Those 7 seconds were the loudest moment in 2 hours of testimony, because in those 7 seconds, everyone in the room understood simultaneously that Kash Patel had not been prepared for this. that whatever his team had anticipated, it had not been this specific document, read aloud, in an open hearing, by a senator who had clearly read every page of it before walking through the door. When he did speak, what came out was careful, professionally constructed. He questioned whether the document Schiff was reading from provided full context. He suggested that the classification markings indicated a narrow and specific scope. He indicated that he would want to consult with appropriate legal counsel before commenting on classified material in an open setting. These are not unreasonable responses on their face, but Schiff had anticipated every one of them. He turned to the next page of the file. The context is on the following page, he said. Would you like me to read it? Patel said he would want to consult with counsel first. Schiff. Read it anyway. What the following pages contained extended and deepened the account the first pages had established. More dates, more names, more documented decisions that the official classified record of the United States government had recorded in terms that did not match the version of events the nominee had been presenting. By the time Schiff finished reading, the hearing had become something entirely different from what it had been 2 hours earlier. It had become a record, not a political exchange, not a performance designed to generate a 30-second clip for social media, not a confirmation proceeding running along its predictable partisan lines, where members ask the questions, their base wants asked, and nominees give the answers. Their base wants given, and everyone goes home having done exactly what they were expected to do. A moment where the gap between a public narrative and an official classified account had been placed, permanently and irrevocably, into the congressional record of the United States Senate. To understand why this matters beyond the immediate moment, you have to understand what classified documents represent inside the American national security system. They are not political instruments. They are not assembled by one party to damage another. They are created by the professional staff of the intelligence community, analysts, officers, and officials whose job is to document what actually happened as accurately and completely as possible, without regard for how that documentation serves anyone's political interests. When a classified document says that a specific thing happened on a specific date involving specific individuals, that is not an allegation. It is not an interpretation. It is the official record of the United States government. That record has weight, not political weight, not the weight of one party's argument against another's. Institutional weight, the weight of an official determination made by professionals whose job is accuracy, not narrative. It has weight in legal proceedings. It has weight in institutional accountability. And it has weight in confirmation hearings, where the question before the Senate is not whether a nominee is politically aligned with the majority, but whether they are truthful enough and trustworthy enough to be given authority over some of the most sensitive operations in the American national security apparatus. Adam Schiff sits on the Senate Intelligence Committee. That is not a ceremonial position. Members of the Senate Intelligence Committee are granted access to some of the most sensitive information the United States government possesses. They read documents that the public will never see. They receive briefings that are never reported. They develop, over years of this work, a precise understanding of what the classified record of American national security activity actually looks like, how it is structured, what it means when it says specific things in specific ways, and when what it contains diverges from what has been said publicly. Schiff has spent years inside that world. He has read more classified material than almost anyone outside the professional intelligence community. He understands, better than almost anyone in that chamber, what a classified record means and what it costs to bring one into an open hearing. He made that choice deliberately. He made it because he had read the file. He had read what it contained, and he had decided that what it contained was too significant, too directly relevant to the question of whether Kash Patel should be confirmed as the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation to leave it unaddressed in a closed session that the public would never see. So he brought it into the open. He read it on the record, in public, in front of cameras, in a room full of senators and attorneys and journalists and every American watching the feed. He made the classified account of what actually happened a part of the permanent public record of the United States Senate confirmation process for the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And he let it sit there, in the permanent transcript of a Senate confirmation hearing, where it will remain regardless of what any political operation or communications team attempts to say about it afterward. The aftermath of those minutes played out in the way that extraordinary hearing moments always play out in Washington, quickly and intensely on some channels, quietly and carefully on others. But the hearing itself does not care about the aftermath. It is already complete. It is already transcribed. It is already part of the permanent record of the United States Senate. Patel's team issued careful statements. Legal advisors noted the procedural complexities of reading classified material in open session. Supporters argued that context was being stripped from documents designed to be read in their entirety. Opponents argued that the documents said exactly what they said and that the context only made the picture clearer. Of that is the noise that follows a moment like this. 1. The moment itself was something simpler, A senator with 20 years of experience on intelligence committees walked into a confirmation hearing with a classified file. He read from it on the record, and the nominee sitting across the table, a man who had been preparing for this hearing for weeks, with some of the best political minds in Washington, had no answer that could close the distance between what the document said and what he had been saying. That distance did not close during the hearing. It did not close in the statements that followed. It remains open, and it will remain open until someone provides an account of events that is consistent with what the classified record of the United States government shows actually happened. Adam Schiff put that file on the table. He read what was in it, and the entire hearing changed the moment he did, because that is what happens when the official record enters the room. It doesn't argue. It doesn't perform. It doesn't need to. It just sits there, exactly as it was written, and waits for someone to explain it. Kash Patel is still waiting to find that explanation. The file is still on the table. So what do you think about that moment? Did the classified document reveal something that couldn't be explained? Or is there still context missing behind what was read into the record? Let me know your take in the comments. Read every single one. And if you want more breakdowns of the most intense moments inside Congress, make sure to like the video and subscribe to Capital Clash so you don't miss what comes next.